Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today we're going to be taking a look at something a little different. Władysława Reymont's Chłopi, and more specifically the first part, Jazzy Autumn.
Great choice. Yeah, Chłopi is really something, and Jezzy is the perfect place to start, I think.
Yeah, it really throws you right into the world of the novel. One of the things that really grabbed me right away was how vivid Reymont's descriptions are. It's like you're not just reading about this village, you're there.
Right, it's immersive. You can practically smell the earth, hear the sounds of the village, even taste the food.
Exactly, like I could almost smell the earth after a rain or hear the rustle of like fabric. It's really incredible. And speaking of food, those descriptions of the meals, like I was ready to grab a fork.
Yeah, Reymont was a master of realism and naturalism. He really wanted to capture the reality of peasant life in late 19th century Poland. And he did that through these details.
Yeah, he didn't shy away from the difficult aspects either, like that scene with Boryny's sick cow. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, that scene is really hard to read, but it's also so powerful, right? It shows the fragility of life in that world, how everything is connected to the land.
Right, it's not just a sick animal. It's about Boryny's whole world, his livelihood, his place in the community. You could really feel the weight of that scene.
And it's interesting how Reymont contrasts those harsh moments with the beauty of everyday life. Remember the description of Jagna's wedding attire? It's so detailed, so vibrant.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's like those details about clothing or food aren't just there for the sake of it. They tell us something about the characters, their values, the world they live in.
Absolutely. They highlight the importance of tradition and ritual, how outward appearances mattered in this community. It's all part of Reymont's effort to paint a complete, authentic picture of peasant life.
And it makes me think about that constant tension between individual desires and what society expects. It's like everyone in Lips is trying to balance those two things.
Yeah, you really see that throughout the novel. All the characters are wrestling with those expectations, trying to find their place within this community.
And it makes me wonder if Reymont was also saying something about the bigger picture, right? Like Poland itself was going through huge changes at that time.
It's hard not to see those parallels. Poland was modernizing, industrializing, trying to find its place in a changing Europe. And those themes are definitely present in Chłopi.
Like Poland was caught between these powerful neighbors trying to assert its own identity. And then in the novel, you have Jagna, this young woman who wants something more than what tradition dictates.
Exactly. Jagna's story is so fascinating because she embodies that struggle between individual desire and societal pressure. She's beautiful, she's full of life, and she's not content to just follow the path that's laid out for her.
It's like she represents the changing times, this desire for something new, something different. And of course, that makes her a threat to the established order.
And the village responds with gossip, with judgment, with attempts to control her. Remember that recurring motif of the łapy, the crow's nest?
Oh yeah, those places where everyone gathers to spread rumors. It's such a chilling image, right?
It really is. It highlights how powerful social pressure can be in a small community, how reputation can be a weapon.
And it makes me think about how much power a community can have over an individual, especially a woman like Jagna.
Exactly. Reymont doesn't shy away from those difficult realities. And speaking of powerful forces, we can't forget the title of this first part, Jazzy Autumn.
Right, it's not just a random choice of season, is it? It sets the whole mood for this part of the story.
It's more than just a backdrop. Autumn in Chłopi is full of symbolism. Think about what autumn represents: the harvest, the decline of nature, the preparation for winter.
It's like the whole village is holding its breath, waiting for what's to come. And knowing Reymont, I have a feeling it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, there's a sense of foreboding that runs through Jaya. It's like the calm before the storm. And those descriptions with the changing leaves, the colder air, they all contribute to that feeling.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There's also that sense of abundance with the harvest, the colors, the smells. It's all so vivid.
Yes, and that contrast is important. It highlights the beauty of the natural world, even as it hints at the hardships to come. It's like Reymont is saying life is full of both joy and sorrow, and that's something that resonates throughout Chłopi.
And it makes you think about how the changing seasons affect us even today, right? Even if we don't live in a rural village, we still feel the shift in the air, the change in the light.
Absolutely, there's something universal about that experience, and Reymont captures it beautifully in JC.
Yeah, it's like he's inviting us to experience those changes alongside the characters, to feel the weight of the season, the anticipation of what's to come.
And that's what makes Chłopi such a powerful novel. It's not just a story, it's an experience.
Exactly, and I think we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover as we continue our deep dive.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what other insights we find as we delve deeper into Chłopi. That feeling of anticipation is so strong in JC, like everyone's bracing themselves for something big.
Yeah, you can practically feel the tension building. And before we get too swept up in the what-ifs of winter, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, that idea of tradition versus change.
Right, yeah.
It seems like Jagnet is right at the heart of that struggle.
Oh, absolutely. She embodies that yearning for something more than what tradition
Right,
allows.
like she wants to make her own choices.
Exactly. It's not just about romantic love. It's about agency, having control over her own life.
And Raymont really emphasizes that through her clothing, right? Like those vibrant colors set her apart from the other women in Lips.
Yes, it's like her clothes are a symbol of her rebellious spirit, her refusal to conform completely.
And that makes her both fascinating and dangerous to the community.
Exactly. She becomes this lightning rod for their anxieties about change, and of course that's where the gossip comes in.
Right, that gapi nazdo, that constant hum of judgment, it turns into a weapon against her.
It's a reminder of how much power a community can hold over an individual, especially a woman.
And it's not just Jagna who's challenging the status quo Antek with his ambition and his love for her. He's also pushing against the boundaries.
Yeah, Antek's story is interesting because it represents a different kind of rebellion. It's not just about personal desires. It's about economic power.
Right, he wants to be a landowner, a position of authority.
Exactly. And his pursuit of Jagna further disrupts the social order. It's like their love story throws everything into chaos.
It's like a classic love triangle, but with these deeper social and economic implications.
Right. Reymont uses it to expose the cracks in this seemingly stable community. And as autumn progresses, those cracks widen.
Which brings us back to that symbolism of the season, right? The decay, the harvest, the impending winter. It's all connected.
It really is. It's like Reymont is using those natural elements to foreshadow what's going to happen to the characters.
Like that scene where Boryny loses his prized cow. It's not just a financial setback, it's symbolic of his declining power, his vulnerability.
Exactly. You're picking up on those layers of meaning that make Chłopi so fascinating. It's not just a surface-level story. It's about those deeper themes of desire, power, and the struggle for survival.
It makes you think about how much of human behavior is driven by those same forces even today.
Reymont understood those timeless struggles, and that's why Chłopi continues to resonate with readers even after all these years.
It definitely gives me a new appreciation for the power of realism in literature.
Reymont's attention to detail, his willingness to explore both the beauty and the hardship of present life, it all adds up to create a truly immersive experience.
And he uses those details to enhance the symbolic impact, right? Like those little things, the dead cow Jagner's clothing, the whispers in the Gapi Gnazdo, they all add up to something bigger.
Absolutely. It's like he's weaving this tapestry of meaning with every detail.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but what can we expect as we move into Zima winter?
Let's just say that Reymont doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of winter. But even in the midst of hardship, there's also a sense of resilience, a strength that comes from community.
Knowing Raymond, I have a feeling those moments of warmth and connection are going to be hard-won.
Absolutely. But we'll have to dive into Nima to see how it all unfolds.
Well, I'm ready to brave the winter winds. Let's continue our deep dive into Chłopi. We talked about the realism, the social conflicts, and all that symbolism Raymond weaves through Jezia. But there's another layer I'm curious about: faith and religion.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like such a powerful force in the lives of these characters.
Absolutely. For the peasants of Lips of Faith isn't just something you do on Sundays. It's part of everything they do.
Right. It's like it's woven into the fabric of their lives.
Exactly. It shapes their understanding of the world, their relationship with nature, their sense of community.
We see it in so many scenes. The villagers praying for a good harvest, making offerings for the dead, sharing stories of saints and miracles.
And those rituals surrounding weddings and funerals, they're not just social gatherings, they're deeply spiritual events.
It's like their whole lives are centered around this belief in something bigger than themselves.
And it's so different from how many people experience religion today, right? It's less about dogma and more about a lived, visceral connection to the divine.
Right. It's not just about going to church. It's about integrating faith into every aspect of their lives.
Exactly. Think about that scene where Kuba, the farmhand, goes to the church to grieve for his parents. It's not just about sadness. It's about seeking solace in a place that represents something eternal, something beyond the hardships of their daily lives.
That scene really stuck with me. The way Raymond describes the church, the flickering candles, the scent of incense, it creates this almost mystical atmosphere.
It's like a refuge from the world, right? A place where they can connect with something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how Raymond captures both the harsh realities and the beauty of peasant life. The church represents that duality in a way.
It's a symbol of hope, of community, of continuity in a world that can often feel unpredictable and unforgiving.
But it's not just about blind faith, is it? There's also a lot of superstition, folk beliefs, a blending of the sacred and the secular.
Remember that story about the wandering saint and his loyal dog? It's a charming tale, but it also reveals how much their faith is rooted in oral tradition, in those stories passed down through generations.
That's a good point. It's like their faith is intertwined with their history, their culture, their connection to the land.
Exactly. It's not just about abstract beliefs, it's about a way of life.
And it makes me think about the Gapiansdo motif we talked about earlier. Both the church and the crow's nest serve as gathering places where people share stories and shape their beliefs, but with very different outcomes.
That's an interesting parallel. One offers solace and connection, while the other breeds suspicion and division.
Right. It's like Reymont is contrasting those two forces at play within the community, the unifying power of faith versus the destructive nature of gossip and social pressure.
And it's worth noting that even within the church itself, we see human flaws. Remember the miller who refuses to marry his pregnant girlfriend?
Oh, yeah. He's supposed to be this devout man, but he's not living up to his own ideals.
Exactly. It's like Reymont is reminding us that even in a deeply religious community, hypocrisy and human weakness exist.
It makes the characters feel more real, more relatable.
Right. They're not perfect. They're just trying to navigate their lives the best they can.
So after this deep dive, what's the takeaway about religion and Chłopi? What do you think Reymont was trying to convey?
I think he was showing us the multifaceted nature of faith. It can be a source of strength and solace, but also a tool for control and a breeding ground for hypocrisy. It's a powerful force that shapes individual lives and the community as a whole.
It's like he's saying, here's how faith functions in this world, but I'm not going to judge it. I'm leaving that up to you, the reader.
Exactly, and I think that's a message that still resonates today.
Well, I have to say this deep dive into Chłopi has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's given me a whole new perspective on the novel.
It's been a pleasure exploring these themes with you. Chłopi is truly a masterpiece of Polish literature, and I hope our conversation inspires others to discover it.
And for anyone listening, if you're looking for a rich and immersive reading experience, I highly recommend Chłopi.
It's a journey into a world that feels both distant and strangely familiar, full of love-lost resilience and those timeless human struggles that connect us all.
And as you turn the pages, pay attention to those changing seasons. They're not just a backdrop, they're a reflection of the characters' inner lives, the cycles of nature, and the enduring power of the human spirit.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Chłopi. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.